right, so Medicaid, keeping with the theme. All right, so they got a problem. See, this is the problem when you switch bases with the party of the poor, and now you got the poor people.
Right.
71% of Trump voters oppose Medicaid cuts, according to a poll. This was in the Hill. Most President Trump voters say they oppose any cuts to Medicaid as Republican lawmakers wrestle with how to reach up to $2 trillion in budget cuts through their reconciliation bill, a poll released Monday found.
Surrendered to the communists.
See, the poll from Hart Research, conducted for the nonprofit Families Over Billionaires, which advocates in opposition to tax cuts for the wealthy, found 71% of voters who backed Trump said cutting Medicaid would be unacceptable. Voters overall were even more opposed to it, with 82% saying so.
Wow.
6 in 10 Trump voters also said cutting food and nutrition programs would be unacceptable. House Republican leaders are downplaying the potential cuts to Medicaid benefits, saying changes to the program would consist of work requirements and reducing fraud, not changes like lowering the federal match for states that have expanded Medicaid. Quote, look, Medicaid has never been on the chopping block, House Speaker Mike Johnson said during a press conference. If you eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse in Medicaid, you've got a huge amount of money that you can spend on real priorities for the country. Unquote. There's just a bold-faced lie, as we will see. Trump has vowed not to touch Medicaid as part of the cuts, but has included a caveat for finding waste or abuse within the program. This is exactly why they're ginning you up to believe there's an enormous amount of fraud and waste, so that they can actually just cut benefits and tell you that's why they did it. So just to give you an idea of who would be impacted by any Medicaid cuts, nearly 4 in 10 recipients are children. Over 8 in 10 are children in poverty. Nearly half of adults in poverty. More than 1 in 4 adults ages 19 to 64 with disabilities. 41% of all births in the United States are covered by Medicaid. Nearly half of children with special health care needs. 5 in 8 nursing home residents. Now I'm just going to make a little side note here. Probably the reason that half of children with special health care needs are on Medicaid is their special health care needs in our hellscape of a country probably bankrupted their parents in cases where they might have been middle class, but they'll suck every penny out of your bank account and then they'll give you coverage. Steve Bannon, who, whatever you think of sloppy Steve, he's no dummy. I've said this many times. If Trump's ego had allowed him to keep Steve Bannon on, Musk, he has no choice. Musk literally owns his ass. He literally has an Elon tattoo on his scrotum at this point. But Bannon didn't have Elon money, so he wasn't going to be upstaged by him. If he had allowed Bannon to be his rove, he never would have been voted out of office. Because Bannon, he says right here, yeah, he would like to cut Medicaid, but he gets the political implications.
We see the math, and I mean hundreds of billions of dollars of cuts, hundreds of billions of dollars of cuts. And stop whining about entitlements. Get into that discretionary spending. Get into the Pentagon. Get into Medicaid. Medicaid, you got to be careful because a lot of MAGA's on Medicaid. I'm telling you, if you don't think so, you are dead wrong. Medicaid's going to be a complicated one. Just can't take a Medex to it, although I would love to.
See, that's the thing. Bannon would love to see you die for lack of health care, but he understands that it's not a politically smart decision.
Right.
What can House...
If only they had all voted for Kamala, then we could purge them.
Yeah, there you go. What can House Republicans cut instead of Medicaid? Not much. And this is why I was saying what Johnson said in the Hill article is bullshit. And he knows it because there's no way they could do what they're planning without cutting Medicaid. Almost no way. The House passed a budget resolution early Tuesday night after Speaker Mike Johnson persuaded several Republican lawmakers, including those who have expressed reservations about possible Medicaid cuts, to support the bill. In theory, the budget, which kicks off the process of passing an extension of tax cuts enacted in 2017, and up to $2 trillion in spending cuts meant to partly offset them, could become law without significant cuts to Medicaid. But it won't be easy. That process has a few more steps. For one, the Senate has to adopt this budget resolution. Then both houses of Congress will also need to write and pass legislation that follows its instructions. The budget resolution itself is silent on whether Congress cuts Medicaid, which provides health coverage to 72 million poor and disabled Americans, but it instructs the House Energy and Commerce Committee, which has jurisdiction over the program, to cut spending by $880 billion over the next decade. If the committee can't save at least that much, the entire effort could be imperiled because of the special process Congress is using to avoid a Senate filibuster. 10 other committees have their own instructions to follow, though none have been assigned with cutting nearly as much. It's not so simple as finding the cuts elsewhere. The special process known as budget reconciliation means Republicans will have to find all $880 billion from within the Energy and Commerce Committee's jurisdiction. That leaves them with fewer options than one might think. Option one, cut Medicare instead. If Republicans want to avoid major cuts to Medicaid, the largest pot of available money is in the other big government health insurance program, Medicare. But Republicans face an even tighter political bind when it comes to Medicare than they do with Medicaid. President Trump has said repeatedly that he does not wish to cut Medicare, and most House Republicans have made a similar pledge. Social Security and Medicare is off the books now, President Biden said during last year's State of the Union address, drawing a standing ovation from nearly every Republican present. Option two, cut everything else the committee oversees. Even if the committee cuts everything that's not healthcare to zero, it will still be more than $600 billion short. The committee could also save around $200 billion by eliminating the Children's Health Insurance Program, but that option has not been raised by the Budget Committee or anyone in House leadership. In option three, they talk about, these kind of really Hail Mary passes like licensing the public airwaves and such. So skipping ahead to option four, even if all of these cuts, revenues, and rule cancellations from outside healthcare can pass muster, the committee will still be left with hundreds of billions of dollars to cut to hit its goal. Mathematically, the Budget Committee's instructions mean the committee would need to make major cuts to either Medicare, Medicaid, or both. Now, this is what you call creating a crisis. And why are they creating a crisis? Because they want to cut taxes for themselves and their rich friends, as we saw in the previous segment, and we'll briefly revisit. Congressional leadership has been signaling that Medicaid has been the main focus. Quote, $880 billion is a lot of money. And even if only $600 billion is coming from healthcare, you have to go beyond tiny tinkering on the margins, said Mark Goldwein, a senior policy director at the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a group that supports deficit reductions in every way except taxing rich people and corporations. In every way but that, they support deficit reduction. So just to revisit very briefly, this is what this is all about. Funding these tax cuts, 68% of which go to the richest 20% of people in the country. Average tax changes from Trump's proposals by category. So if you look at who gets this money from these tax cuts, the richest 1% would wind up saving $78,370. The poorest 20%, $140 would get from these tax cuts. Why is there this sudden desperation to make these budget cuts to stuff this money in the pockets of the richest 1% that already hold the lion's share of the wealth. That's what this is about. Now, interesting little bit here in this article. We're just going to read a little bit of this. Republicans gamble on a regressive economic agenda. At least somebody in the Republican Party realizes the implications of doing this given their new base. For some Republicans, pursuing an agenda that cuts taxes and spending is frustrating given the way the party's support has changed over time. Such an agenda may have made some political sense back when Republicans received more of their support from rich Americans. Not anymore, said Orrin Cass, a founder of the think tank The American Compass and a leading voice in the so-called New Right. Quote, they have this old script they think they're supposed to be reading off that says we're going to cut taxes for high-income families and cut benefits for the poor, he said. That was always an incredibly dumb script, but it was one that the Republican Party thought it should be pursuing once upon a time. And now the Republican Party doesn't think they should be pursuing it, but they're still blindly wandering forward as if that's what they're supposed to do. I think that is dead on. That's dead on. They're doing this old Reaganomics playbook. They don't have that kind of a coalition in their party anymore. You wanted the working class, you got them. They're poor. The people making over $100,000 a year, they're Democrats now. That's not your constituency. Your constituency is, as Bannon pointed out, even though it's not moral, he would love to see these people die for lack of health care, Darwinian survival of the fittest kind of Thunderdome shit. But he realizes that has political implications that, as Keaton said, and I think he's right, what could revive this moribund Democratic Party with absolutely no ideas to offer? This. Go and kick everybody off what little healthcare funding this country offers, many of whom are MAGA voters. Kick impoverished mothers with children off of SNAP. And yeah, that could actually bring the Democrats back from the dead. Even though it looks right now with, Chris Murphy bowing to the security guard at the Department of the Treasury in their big storm of the Bastille moment. Maxine Waters, they all look so cringe. You can't imagine them coming back. Keep going in this direction. This is probably the only way you could revive the Democrats as a party, is doing this.
Right. And so they have put themselves in a very difficult spot here because they pushed through this budget resolution, which requires $880 billion worth of spending cuts. And as you just saw in that Times write-up, there is no real way to do that without taking a meat axe to Medicaid. And there is no way to do that.
Or Medicare, which is even worse.
Medicare is even worse. Well, seniors vote more than poor people, so that's even worse. So that's really not an option, right? They would have to gut health care for the poor and for the working poor, which is a lot of MAGA, as Steve Bannon said. 41% of births are covered by Medicaid. When we had our twin boys, those were covered by Medicaid. We didn't know a dime for those births. Our latest one here, we are in medical debt for that birth, and we will be for many, many years, right? You pull that rug out from under people.
And you have insurance, right?
Yeah, and I have yes. And so, the idea that you're going to get away with that is nonsense. There will be a historic blue wave in 2026 if they do what this resolution requires them to do, which is why the only way out is to scrap it and start over, which means I don't know why Trump went to bat for this. I don't know why they maneuvered to push this through Congress.
He's lazy.
Yeah.
He doesn't pay attention.
They're going to have to start over, or else they will face a historic drubbing. much, much bigger than the blue wave of 2018. This will be on par with the 2010 Republican red wave, which happened as a result of what? Barack Obama saying, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. When people found out that wasn't true, there was hell to pay. So there is no way to do this without facing tremendous political blowback.
And
they
all of
understand
this-
that. They understand if they do this, they will get a thumping in the midterms. Now, does Elon Musk give a shit about that? We don't know. Do they say, fuck it, we've wanted to do this for 100 years, this is our chance, let's just go ahead and do it anyway? They might. They might. Knowing the Republicans, there's a good chance they will. But there will be a price to pay for it, as sure as I am sitting here. You're already starting to see town halls in deep red districts being flooded with angry people who are shouting them down over shit not nearly as severe as what they're talking about here. When you fuck with people's health care, you get burned. Obama made that mistake in 2009 by making false promises about the ACA. The Republicans made a big mistake by trying to repeal it in 2018. They get mad at John McCain for doing that thumbs down. Let me tell you something. John McCain, by voting thumbs down, probably saved them twice the drubbing that they got that year. It was a pretty bad midterms for the GOP that year. Would have been twice as bad if they repealed Obamacare. Right.
And
so this is a lesson that they know. They know what's in for them.
And all of this is about that. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
They added, in spite of what Hegseth said, they added $100 billion in defense spending. Look, they're running all through the government, firing people from the VA, which we're supposed to care so much about. Pentagon has failed 7 audits. Have you seen Doge set foot in the Pentagon? Have you seen Doge show up at the Pentagon? They're robbing you right before your eyes. They're telling you what your priorities are right before your eyes. All they care about is giving tax cuts to their rich buddies, and they're not going to fuck the defense contractors to do it. They're not going to. All this stuff about USAID, which we support, dismantling USAID. Brian Burlatek has been making the point, no, they're not really dismantling the empire. They're consolidating it. They're trimming some of the fat from it. They're trying to make it more precise. Yeah, they're unwoking it, but that's not really the main thrust of what they're doing. And now there's the evidence, right? Why would they increase the defense budget $100 billion if they're really planning on paring it down and cutting it back? They want to maintain the military advantages of empire, and they want the wealth and riches that come with those advantages only to go to them and their class. What little goes to you, that's what they're trying to get rid of.
Please clap.